We're picking up from The Love Soul of J. Alfred Prufrock, line 10, and we are walking around streets that follow like a tedious argument, blocking our way, an argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. So these streets have got an agenda. They want to take you to an overwhelming question. ... What is the overwhelming question? That's what we want to know. But no, do not ask what is it. Let us go and make our visit. So, having conceived the conceptual idea that there is an overwhelming question, which this walk that we're taking is going to lead us to, then Prufrock says, oh, no, let's not bother with that and let's make our visit. And the do not ask what is it, let us go and make our visit has this sing-songy children's rhyme kind of quality, which trivializes the overwhelming question, or certainly stands in sharp contrast to the overwhelming question. We also see here that Prufrock is avoiding something. So the interruption of the idea that the streets lead us to an overwhelming question with the refusal to engage with that question, that is telling us something about the way Prufrock's mind works. And then we meet for the first time this famous couplet. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. Michelangelo, great sculptor, artist, huge, muscular, violent, masculine, titan of the Renaissance. And that's what the women talk about in the room where they come and go. The fact that they come and go suggests that they're not having in-depth conversations. And the point that is being made here is that talking of Michelangelo is a social convention. It's something that people do. It's pretentious. It's making you sound well-educated and important. It's a kind of a social ritual that people are engaged in, well, specifically women are engaged in, and it's intimidating. Prufrock is not comfortable with that. And where his mind goes next, the yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys. These are not pretty ideas. So he goes from the room where the women are talking about Michelangelo, and certainly in my mind, I've got teacups and nice afternoon dresses and lightweight chatter. It's a social fraud of a kind, the pretense and the pattern of ritual that people follow. And then he jumps to this really poisonous image of yellow fog, which is probably literally yellow because of sulfur in it. And the fog is personified. Look through that stanza and see if it tells you anywhere that it's a cat. It doesn't. It's cat-like, because it rubs its back and it rubs its muzzle and it licks its tongue into the corners. These are cat-like qualities, but we're never told it's a cat. We get the parts of the cat, but not the cat itself. So here is our good friend synecdoche, or fragmentation. Now remember that Eliot is anti-aesthetic and he is absolutely huge in modernist. He's a huge modernist poet, and the number one technique used by modernists is fragmentation. So you take the part of something and that is used to symbolize or signify the whole of it. So this fog-like, cat-like fog decides that it's a soft October night. Look back to the stanza before. We had adjectives. We had sawdust restaurants. We had a tedious argument. We had half-deserted streets. We had insidious intent. But in this paragraph, this stanza, everything is much more definite and clear. It's written in the active voice. The yellow fog rubs its back, the yellow smoke. We know who's doing what. It's the fog, it's the smoke. We know who's leading the action. But what happens at the end is that there is a soft October night, and the fog curled once about the house and fell asleep. We have this nasty, poisonous, sulphurous fog enveloping a house and settling down and deciding it's going to stay there. So the ugliness of the city, the detritus, the smoke, the smog, that comes from burning coke and coal in real life, makes life impenetrable. Just as the patient was etherized on the table in the previous stanza, we now have this opaqueness, this inability. You're not alive. If you're swathed in fog, you can't see. It's opaque. You can't get out. And now the mind jumps again. And indeed there will be time. For the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes, there will be time. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. The repetition of time is a preoccupation that Prufrock has. It's an allusion to a number of things. First of all, there's the Bible, Ecclesiastes, with the idea that there is a time to live and a time to die and a time to sow and a time to reap. This is a biblical allusion. Everything has its proper moment. But it's also an allusion to a poem by Marvell called To His Coy Mistress, which is an erotic poem, a love poem, which talks about the way in which had we but world enough and time. Prufrock, like the mistress in that other poem, is not taking advantage of the time that he's got. And if you go back and take a closer look at this stanza, he goes on and on. Time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create. Time for all the works and days of hands. Time for you and time for me and time for yet 100 indecisions and 100 visions and revisions. There will be time, there will be time, there will be time. We've got this metronomic beating of the time and the t, which gives it a percussive, rather irritating quality. It kind of bangs into your head the way he repeats time. So the juxtaposition of this incessant repetition is then undercut by the last two lines. There'll be time for 100 indecisions and visions and revisions before the taking of the toast and tea. Again, vast canvas about life, about murder and create. There will be time to murder and create is interpreted in a lot of different ways. You write, you start again, you kill something, you start again, you have children, you kill them. Maybe you don't kill them. People die, people live. And 100 indecisions and 100 visions and revisions. That is the process of writing a poem. That is the process of literature. You write it, you revise it, you change it, you decide about it, you chuck it out, it goes on and on. But you have this sense of incessant pressure working in Prufrock's mind. And what are you going to do? You're going to have a cup of tea and a piece of toast. The reduction from the grand to this really quotidian daily activity where we just have a cup of tea and a piece of toast. In the end, all this grandness is just reduced to something as ordinary as that. And indeed, there will be time to wonder, do I dare? Do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair. We descended into hell, and now he descends the stair. It's like he's going into a party, but maybe changing his mind. He gets to the door and he thinks, oh, I can turn around and I can go back. But with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. And then in parentheses, they will say how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to my chin. My necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. And they will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. He's a meagre creature. He's very carefully dressed. He's very formally dressed. Look at the closeness of the rhyme. That's symbolic of the close focus, the tidiness. Thin, chin, pin, thin again. Exactly. Everything very well placed and precise. Do I dare disturb the universe? He's just described walking up some stairs, changing his mind about going to a party, turning around and going down, descending, making the top of his head visible to some people who will criticize his appearance. And notice how thin and poor his hair is. The thinness and meagreness of his body is symbolic of his persona. It's not just his physique, which is nothing much. He feels he's nothing much. He feels insignificant. And to go into the party or to do something like this, to change his mind, that's disturbing the universe. He's got this grand world that he doesn't want to upset. But in a minute, there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. He's plagued with this obsession about uncertainty. And at the end of this section, we make quite an abrupt tone shift. which we will deal with in our next video.